America has 335 million people, and somehow most of them ended up crammed into the same zip codes. But go far enough in any direction, and the country opens up into something entirely different. Places so empty, so remote, so geographically unforgiving that the question is not why nobody lives there, but rather how anyone ended up there at all. So today, we're counting down the 10 places nobody wants to live in, the emptiest in America. Number 10, Esmeralda County, Nevada. Nevada already has large stretches of nothing. That's kind of the whole deal with the Great Basin, a region of parallel mountain ranges and broad desert valleys between the Sierra Nevada and the Rockies, where the roads are long and the towns are small and the silence at night is total. But even within Nevada, Esmeralda County stands out. Esmeralda County covers about 3,589 square miles in southwestern Nevada and has a population of approximately 940 people. That works out to roughly 0.26 people per square mile. For comparison, the most densely populated county in the United States, New York County in Manhattan, has about 70,000 people per square mile. The distance between those two numbers is not just a matter of preference. It is a matter of geology and water, and the particular cruelty of the basin and range landscape when it comes to supporting human habitation. The county seat is Goldfield, which was once one of the most productive gold mining camps in Nevada, a boomtown that by 1910 had a population of around 4,800 people. Goldfield had electricity before Los Angeles did. It had a 3-story hotel, multiple newspapers, and a boxing match in 1906 between Joe Gans and Battling Nelson that drew tens of thousands of spectators. The gold ran out, the water supply deteriorated. A fire in 1923 destroyed much of the commercial district. A flood in 1913 had already weakened the infrastructure. Goldfield today has about 200 residents. The historic hotel still stands, largely empty but occasionally used for events and gatherings of people who find the specific atmosphere of a boomed and busted Nevada mining town appealing. The landscape around it is gorgeous in the way that high desert always is, spare, vast, and indifferent to whether you find it beautiful or not. Highway 95 runs through Goldfield, connecting it to Las Vegas to the south and Reno to the north, but the connection feels mostly theoretical, given how little traffic it carries through town. The county also contains the old town site of Beatty, the gateway community to Death Valley, and the ruins of Rhyolite, a particularly well-preserved ghost town where the shells of stone buildings still stand along streets that once held banks, a train station, and thousands of residents. Rhyolite lasted about 4 years at its peak before the ore ran out entirely. Number 9, McPherson County, Nebraska. The Sandhills of Nebraska are one of the most underappreciated landscapes in North America. They are exactly what the name suggests, a vast region of grass-covered sand dunes in north-central Nebraska, stabilized by native grasses over thousands of years, covering about 19,000 square miles and representing the largest sand dune formation in the Western Hemisphere. McPherson County sits in the middle of the Sand Hills, covers about 855 square miles, and had a population of 391 people as of the 2020 census. The county seat is Tryon, population approximately 200. There is essentially nothing else in the county. What makes McPherson County remarkable is not just the emptiness, but the landscape it inhabits. The rolling grass-covered dunes, the shallow lakes and wetlands that appear in the low areas between dunes, the enormous sky, and the almost complete absence of trees in a landscape that has been cattle country since the late 19th century. The Sandhills are not farming country in any conventional sense. The soil beneath the grass is sandy and thin, and attempts to plow it for crops in the early settlement era were largely disastrous. The grass held the dunes in place, and without it, the land blew away. What works is grazing, and the ranching families who have worked this land for generations have shaped the county's culture and economy around exactly that. They are not tourists, not commuters, not people who ended up here by accident. McPherson County has no incorporated municipalities. Tryon is an unincorporated village. there is no hospital in the county. The school system, which once had multiple rural schools scattered across the county, has consolidated to the point where students from across the county converge on a single location. The highway that runs through the county carries so little traffic that wildlife, deer, pronghorn, the occasional coyote, frequently uses it as a travel corridor. The Sandhills Journal, published in Mullen in neighboring Hooker County, serves as the primary newspaper for much of this region and has been doing so since 1890. The paper covers topics: cattle prices, well permits, county road conditions that reflect a community organized almost entirely around the land and the livestock it supports. Number 8. Petroleum County, Montana. Montana calls itself Big Sky Country, and the name is not exaggerated. The state has a quality of light and a scale of landscape that is genuinely unlike anywhere else in the lower 48. But even within Montana, Petroleum County occupies a special category. Petroleum County covers about 1,654 square miles in central Montana and had a 2020 census population of 487 people. The county seat is Winnett, population around 170. The county was named for the oil that was discovered there in the early 20th century, and for a few decades, the promise of petroleum kept the population from falling below the level needed to maintain county government. That promise proved modest. The oil was real, but the quantities were not large enough to support the kind of infrastructure that would have made the county attractive to sustain development. What remained after the oil boom and bust was ranching country, rolling prairie and badlands terrain in the Musselshell River drainage. Beautiful in the specific austere way that interior Montana always is. The Musselshell River Valley, which runs through the county, was once a route for cattle drives in the open range era of the 1880s, and the landscape still carries the character of that period. Vast, grass-covered hills, river bottomland with cottonwood groves along the water, and the kind of sky that makes a person feel simultaneously insignificant and genuinely free. One local historian who has written about the region described Petroleum County as a place where the 20th century arrived, looked around, and largely decided not to stay. That's a fair assessment. The county has no hospital. Medical emergencies require a significant drive. The nearest city of any real size is Billings, which is about 2 hours to the southeast on roads that are occasionally closed by blizzards in winter, sometimes for days at a time. The Jordan country of neighboring Garfield County is sometimes cited as the most remote area in the contiguous United States. Petroleum County's smaller population suggests a reasonable counter-argument. In central Montana, these distinctions are contested quietly among people who don't particularly care about being on any list at all. Number 7. Harding County, South Dakota. South Dakota has the Badlands and Mount Rushmore and the Black Hills, all of which draw millions of visitors every year. What it also has, in its northwest corner, is Harding County, a place that most South Dakotans have probably never been to and that most Americans have probably never heard of. Harding County covers approximately 2,672 square miles and had a 2020 census population of 1,283 people. The county seat is Buffalo, South Dakota, population around 450. The landscape is rolling mixed grass prairie, the kind of terrain that, before the arrival of European settlers, supported one of the largest concentrations of bison on the continent. The Little Missouri River drainage runs through the county, and the terrain transitions between open prairie and eroded badlands topography. The county was named for Warren G. Harding, who was president when it was organized in 1909. Harding had one of the shortest and, by most historical measures, least distinguished presidencies in American history. He died in office in 1923. The county that bears his name has outlasted his legacy considerably, and the people who live there are largely indifferent to the historical footnote that named their home. The isolation here is genuine but not hostile. Highway 85 passes through Buffalo, connecting the county to the outside world. The Custer National Forest extends into portions of the county, And the Cedar River National Grassland preserves a large stretch of the native mixed grass prairie ecosystem. The cattle ranches that define the local economy have been here for over a century, and the community that has built up around them is the specific kind of tight-knit that comes from people who have lived in the same county for multiple generations and know exactly what each season asks of them. Summers in Harding County can be brutally hot. Winters are characterized by blizzards that occasionally strand residents for days. The spring wildflower season across the native prairie is remarkable and largely unobserved by anyone outside the county. The Theodore Roosevelt National Park, just across the state line in North Dakota, draws significant tourism to the broader region. But very little of it arrives in Harding County specifically, which is probably the way the county prefers it. Number 6. Slope County, North Dakota. North Dakota doesn't get nearly enough credit for the scale of its emptiness. The state is larger than many European countries, and significant portions of it are very lightly inhabited even by Great Plains standards. Slope County, in the southwestern corner of the state along the Montana border, is a good example of what very lightly inhabited actually means in this context. Slope County covers approximately 1,219 square miles and had a 2020 census population of 700 people. The county seat is Amadon, which is the smallest county seat by population in the United States, with around 18 people. Let that sit for a moment. The county seat, the place that serves as the official governmental center of the county, has 18 residents. To run a county government for a geographic area larger than Rhode Island, with that many people requires everyone doing at least 2 jobs. The landscape is the mixed grass prairie and badlands terrain of the Little Missouri River country. Rolling hills, coulees, exposed rock formations in the eroded drainage areas, and the enormous sky that the northern Great Plains produces when there's nothing to interrupt it between you and the horizon. The Little Missouri River itself, which Theodore Roosevelt famously described as the most remarkable scenery in the American West, runs through the broader region. The Maadahe Trail, one of the most celebrated multi-use trails in the Great Plains, passes through the area. What makes Slope County's emptiness remarkable is its stability. The population has been low for as long as census records have existed for the area, and it shows no signs of changing in either direction. The Bakken Oil Formation, which drove an enormous population boom in other parts of North Dakota beginning around 2008, has not significantly affected Slope County. There is no major economic event on the horizon that would pull people in. There is equally no catastrophe pushing the remaining residents out. The county just is, quietly, at the edge of North Dakota, doing what county governments do with about the minimum viable population to constitute one, and somehow making it work season after season, year after year. Number 5, Arthur County, Nebraska. There is a pattern emerging in this list, and Arthur County in Nebraska fits it perfectly. Vast landscape, tiny population, county government operating with what amounts to a skeleton crew, and a community whose character has been defined almost entirely by cattle ranching in one of the more demanding landscapes in the Great Plains. Arthur County covers about 716 square miles in the Sandhills of Nebraska and had a 2020 census population of 381 people. The county seat is Arthur, population around 100. It is one of the least populated county seats in the United States. The county has been the least populated county in Nebraska for much of its recorded history, competing occasionally with McPherson County for the distinction. What Arthur County has that most other places on this list do not is a specific cultural curiosity. A church built entirely from hay bales. The Pilgrim Holiness Church in Arthur, constructed in 1928, is one of the most unusual structures in the Great Plains. A functioning church whose walls are made of stacked bales of native grass hay then plastered over. It seats about 100 people, which is roughly the entire population of the county seat, so presumably everyone gets a good view. The church is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and is one of the few buildings in Arthur County that draws visitors from outside the county. It is, to be fair, a genuinely interesting building in a county that does not have many buildings to begin with. Arthur County has no incorporated cities. The school district serves a dispersed student population across the county, with students traveling significant distances by bus each day. The county fair, held every summer, is one of the primary gathering events of the year and gives the community a chance to demonstrate the specific pride that comes from making something work in a landscape that does not make it easy. The Sand Hills as a whole have a somewhat secret reputation among people who have driven through them. The rolling grass-covered dunes, the empty roads, the quiet. It is the kind of landscape that photography does not fully capture because the quality that makes it compelling has as much to do with the sound of wind through grass and the absence of anything man-made on the horizon as it does with what the camera can record. Number 4, Kennedy County, Texas. Texas has some of the most extreme geography in the continental United States, and Kennedy County is part of that tradition. Located in South Texas between Corpus Christi and the Mexican border, Kennedy County covers about 1,397 square miles and had a 2020 census population of 404 people. The entire county is essentially two things: the King Ranch, one of the largest private ranches in the world, covering about 825,000 acres of South Texas and spanning 6 counties, and the Gulf Coast terrain that surrounds it. Much of Kennedy County is within the boundaries of the King Ranch, and much of it is managed as a wildlife management area or working ranch land that is not open to the public. The county seat is Sarita, population around 200. The landscape is coastal prairie and brushy rangeland, the kind of South Texas terrain that is extremely productive for wildlife, particularly migratory birds, and not particularly hospitable to human settlement without significant water infrastructure. The groundwater is saline in many areas, and the summers are brutally hot in ways that the Gulf Coast humidity makes significantly less manageable than hot and dry alternatives. What is unusual about Kennedy County compared to the other entries on this list is the wildlife. The combination of the King Ranch's conservation programs, the proximity to the Gulf Coast, and the brushy South Texas terrain known as the Tamaulipan Mesquital has made this one of the best birding destinations in the United States. The Great Texas Coastal Birding Trail passes through the region, and serious birders make pilgrimages to southern Kennedy County specifically to look for species that concentrate here during the spring and fall migrations. The county has fewer than 500 people and one of the most impressive bird lists of any county in America. The King Ranch itself was founded in 1853 by Richard King, a steamboat captain who bought land along the Santa Gertrudis Creek and built an empire that eventually covered more land than the entire state of Rhode Island. The ranch developed its own breed of cattle, the Santa Gertrudis, the first beef breed developed in the Western Hemisphere, and its own quarter-horse bloodlines that are still among the most sought after in the country. Kennedy County's road access is limited to Highway 77, which runs north-south along the eastern edge. There is no east-west through route. The ranch fences that define most of the county's interior are not public roads, and the King Ranch is not a public attraction. Tours are available, but access is controlled, and the vast majority of the property remains working ranchland. Number 3, Loving County, Texas. Loving County is in a category by itself. With a 2020 census population of 64 people, it is the least populous county in the United States with a permanent population. The county covers about 677 square miles in West Texas, just south of the New Mexico border, and the county seat, its only community, is Mentone. The Texas Monthly, writing about Loving County, described it as a place where the oil wells outnumber the people 10 to 1. That ratio has not meaningfully improved. The county's economy runs on oil and gas production, which means the few dozen people who live there do so in proximity to an extractive industry operating on a landscape that has almost no other economic use. The groundwater historically had too much gypsum to be drinkable, The Pecos River water was too salty. Water has, at various points in the county's history, had to be trucked in from Kermit or Pecos, Texas. The county was named for Oliver Loving, an early Texas cattleman who was mortally wounded in 1867 near the Pecos River and died in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. A story told in Larry McMurtry's novel Lonesome Dove under fictionalized names. The county that bears his name has had a tortured enough history that the naming feels appropriate. There is no cemetery in Loving County. The only grave is that of a young cowboy named Shady Davis, who was killed by his horse in the 1920s and is buried 12 miles from Mentone. It may be the loneliest grave in America. The county courthouse, which doubles as the only two-story building in Mentone, is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The preacher of the only church drives in from elsewhere to conduct an interdenominational service on Saturdays. The county has had periods in its history when it had more registered voters than actual residents. At some point, the county precinct closed early during elections because everyone had already voted. Loving County was the last county in the contiguous United States to record a confirmed case of COVID-19 on November 17, 2020. 3 cases were confirmed. By that point, much of the country had been in various forms of restriction and lockdown for 9 months. The virus found Loving County last, which is perhaps the most apt metaphor the county has ever produced. Number 2. North Slope Borough, Alaska. Alaska occupies a category that the continental United States simply cannot match when it comes to scale and emptiness. The North Slope Borough covers approximately 94,796 square miles in the northernmost part of the state, above the Brooks Range and extending all the way to the Arctic Ocean, with a 2020 census population of about 11,031 people. That population density of roughly 0.12 people per square mile is extraordinarily low. But what makes the North Slope Borough specifically remarkable is where those people live and under what conditions. The borough seat and largest community is Utqiagvik, known as Barrow until the community voted to restore its Inupiaq name in 2016. Utqiagvik is the northernmost city in the United States, sitting at 71 degrees north latitude on the shore of the Arctic Ocean. For about 66 consecutive days in winter, Utqiagvik does not see the sun rise above the horizon at all. A period of polar night that the Inupiaq people have lived with for thousands of years, and that newcomers find considerably more challenging. The psychological weight of weeks of darkness is something that medical researchers have documented extensively. In compensation, the summer brings continuous daylight for roughly 84 days. The temperature swings between these seasons are extreme. Winter temperatures regularly fall below -40 degrees Fahrenheit, while summer brings temperatures that occasionally reach into the 70s. The other communities scattered across the North Slope are similarly remote. Most are accessible only by air or, in winter, by ice road. Koktovik, the only permanent settlement within the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, has a population of around 250 and is accessible only by air year-round. The Prudhoe Bay Oil Complex on the North Slope is the largest oil field in North America, and the primary reason significant infrastructure exists in this part of Alaska at all. Without the oil industry, the North Slope would be home only to its indigenous communities and the extraordinary wildlife of the Arctic. Polar bears, bowhead whales, caribou herds that number in the hundreds of thousands, and migratory birds arriving from 6 continents to nest in the summer tundra. The borough generates more than enough oil revenue to fund its local government and provide services to its scattered communities, which means it has better public facilities than many far more populated American counties, even if those facilities happen to be located at the top of the world. Number 1. Yukon-Koyukuk Census Area, Alaska. This is it, the emptiest place in America by any reasonable measure. The Yukon-Koyukuk Census Area covers approximately 147,843 square miles in the interior of Alaska, making it the largest county equivalent area in the United States by a significant margin. It is bigger than the entire state of Montana, Its 2020 census population was approximately 5,343 people, giving it a population density of fewer than 0.04 people per square mile. To try to make that number meaningful, if you stood at a random point within the Yukon-Koyukuk census area, the nearest human being might be 20 or 30 miles away. There are areas within its boundaries where the nearest road is 100 miles in any direction. Much of it is accessible only by small aircraft, and weather conditions frequently ground those aircraft for days at a time. The census area takes its name from two rivers, the Yukon and the Koyukuk, which are the primary corridors of human presence in this region. The communities along these rivers are mostly small Alaska Native villages, primarily Athabascan people whose ancestors have lived in this landscape for thousands of years, adapting to conditions that would defeat most people who had not grown up within them. The Koyukon Athabascan people have names and cultural knowledge for virtually every feature of this landscape. Every river bend, every fish camp, every trail through the boreal forest, representing thousands of years of accumulated geographic understanding. The largest communities in the area are Galena, with a population of around 450, and Fort Yukon, with a population of around 580. These are the largest settlements in an area larger than Montana. Fort Yukon holds a distinction that captures the climate extremes of this region. It recorded the state's record high temperature of 100 degrees Fahrenheit in June 1915, the only location in Alaska to have reached that threshold, and also recorded minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit in January 1934. That is a 180-degree temperature range at a single location, which tells you something essential about what living there requires of a person. The Yukon-Koyukuk census area has no county government in the conventional sense. It is part of Alaska's unorganized borough, meaning the state government handles services that would normally fall to a county. There is no county courthouse, no county seat, no county administration to speak of. Gates of the Arctic National Park, one of the least visited national parks in the United States, lies entirely within or adjacent to this census area. It receives fewer than 20,000 visitors per year, a number that Yellowstone achieves in a busy day. It is, by any definition, the emptiest place in America. And in a way that most of the other places on this list cannot match, the emptiness here is not a sign of failure or abandonment. It is simply the honest relationship between a landscape of this scale and the limits of what human beings can build and sustain within it. The places on this list have almost nothing in common with each other, except for the one thing that got them here. The people count is very, very low. The reasons are different everywhere. In Loving County, it's the water and the heat and the oil economics that keep the population barely above zero. In Nebraska's Sandhills, it's the landscape's specific demands on what kind of land use can actually work. In Alaska, it's simply scale. A state so enormous that distributing its population evenly would still leave most of it empty by any conventional definition. What is consistent across all of these places is that they are not simply the absence of somewhere else. They are their own distinct versions of America, shaped by geology and climate, and the specific decisions of the people who chose to stay when everyone else left. The ranching families in Petroleum County, the Inupiaq communities on the North Slope, the 64 residents of Loving County running the county government and the oil operations, and the only church's Saturday services. All of them have very specific reasons for being exactly where they are. There is something clarifying about these places that the crowded parts of the country can't offer. When the nearest neighbor is 5 miles away and the cell signal disappeared 20 miles back, certain questions about why you're somewhere and what you're doing with your time become a lot harder to avoid. The people who live in America's emptiest counties have answered those questions, at least to their own satisfaction. The rest of us drive past on our way to somewhere with better Wi-Fi and more restaurant options, and we never quite know what we're missing, or more accurately, what we're not. The emptiest places in America are not nothing. They are just very, very quiet. And in a country that has a hard time sitting with silence, that might be the most unusual thing about them. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more content like this.